Welcome to Gen Z Hoops, the Gen Z basketball, coaching, and sports business show.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Gen Z Hoops podcast. Today, I'm joined by official NBA insider for ESPN, Mr. Bobby Marks himself. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for this opportunity today. So I'd like to jump into our little conversation right now. Can you talk a little bit about your connection to the game of basketball?
Yeah, well, ironically, I was a football player growing up. I played football in high school. I wrestled. I played tennis. I got recruited to play football in college. I went to Marist in Poughkeepsie, New York. Didn't really have a basketball connection. I loved watching it, but really didn't have a connection until I had to do an internship to graduate Marist, and I was fortunate to get an internship with the then New Jersey Nets in 1995, and that just opened up my door to different opportunities that I've experienced over the last 30 years, and that's my start into the basketball world. Was the summer of 1995, working in East Rutherford, New Jersey, for a New Jersey Nets team, and has progressed since then.
So you mentioned you played football. What role model growing up, like who inspired you at a young age? I want to know.
You know what? I mean, from a player standpoint, I was a huge Cowboy fan growing up.
Oh.
Like, this is you're too young for some of the names I'm going to give it to you. So this is my wife was a Cowboy fan when, like, Troy Aikman and that group, Michael Irvin. I was a huge Tony Dorsett fan. Like, I was a huge Tony Dorsett fan, early 80s Cowboys. I used to cry when I lost to the Eagles and the 49ers and all those good teams and everything like that. But really, like, my introductory to into sports, into like my role models and everything like that, like I grew up in a household where my dad was heavily involved in sports. We used to get the newspaper every morning. It's a lot different than it is now. The newspaper would be like, I'd open my door and it would be right there. And I would just read box scores. I would read box scores, whether it be baseball or basketball or football. And that's kind of like how I grew, like, my love of sports. I used to sleep over at my grandparents' house once a week. And every Saturday morning, I'd get the North Star Ledger and I'd just read through box scores. And we grew up in a predominantly Italian home. And our cousins lived next to us. Like, we lived in a court and they lived right next to us. So when my dad wasn't around, my cousins took me to sports. They took me to practice. They took me to my cousins coached me growing up and everything like that. So those are probably like my role models as far as, just from my introductory into the love of football, or whether it be basketball or wrestling or tennis, that it came from internally.
So as we all know, we go through these different phases in life and we go through like find all these different interests. At what point did you know that you wanted to work in sports?
You know what? I wanted to work in law enforcement. That was my original goal.
Really?
Yeah, and this is how it's an interesting path. So I went to Marist. Marist had a really good criminal justice program there. I was a communications major with a focus on PR. And I had the opportunity to change major. This is how lazy I was in the beginning parts of college. Like, it was raining. Literally, I did not want to walk across campus and change my major my freshman year to criminal justice. And that kind of deviated me into the where I guess I am right now here. But I always had a fascination kind of in law enforcement with FBI, Secret Service, local police, solving crimes and everything like that. I really, like, my love of where I am now and stuff like that. Like, if you would have told me 30 years ago you would have worked for the New Jersey Nets, Brooklyn Nets, for 20 years, and then you'd be with ESPN 8 years, I'd say you're crazy. Like, there's no crazy. And I always say, like, the generation of today have a better understanding of kind of what they want to do.
Right.
Like, whether you're a freshman or, like, I have a son who's at USC, who's a freshman, who knows, like, what he wants to do 4 years from now. Like, I had no idea what I wanted to do until I got to the Nets. I worked for them for free. I did my 6 credits. I couldn't get a job. I asked to stay along when working in basketball operations. Will Reed was the general manager at the time. And then I was like, well, this is pretty interesting. You know, it's working with the players and the coaches and scouting and video analytics and everything in between. And that's kind of like where, I mean, it really wasn't until maybe a year out of college where I was like, this could be something, for me. And then you fast forward 20 years from there, you know, you could say the same thing from the media standpoint. Like, I never thought I would be doing writing articles, or, I mean, I did an hour of TV yesterday on NBA TD, on NBA Today, and I would have never said that's what I wanted to be, but life takes you kind of on these kind of winding journeys.
So as you mentioned before, in 1995, you started as an intern for the New Jersey Nets.
Yep.
How were you able to get this position, and what was your mindset at this point in your career?
Yeah, well, my mindset was I needed 6 credits to graduate. I was not a great student my first 2 years. I was like lazy, and I didn't go to class, and I was like lacking credits. And like, so, but by the time I got to my junior year, I had a major catch up, right? Like, I was taking 18 credit semesters. I was doing summer class. I was doing winter, like basically like I was cramming. I basically, you know, taking an extra semester in a summer, like, so I needed 6 credits to graduate. The easiest way to do it would be an internship. I grew up with a friend of mine who lived in Hoboken, New Jersey, and they lived in a house with a bunch of people. And one of the guys there was selling tickets for the New Jersey Nets. And I got on my resume, and here goes to like network, right? Meet people, network, get in front of people. Got on my resume. He got it to the power of B. I interviewed for an internship job in November of 1994. Eric Spoelstra's dad, John Spoelstra, was the president of the Nets then.
No way.
Yep. And wound up getting an internship working in PR, and that's satisfied my 6 credits. Now, here's the funny part. So the guy who was selling tickets in the bullpen, we call it, calling people at dinner and people were hanging up on him, his name was Scott O'Neill. So Scott O'Neill wound up going to the Philadelphia Eagles, the NBA. He was the president of the Knicks. He is now in charge of Legoland. He is the head of Legoland, so the amusement park. So that's kind of the journey, right? Like, that's the journey of meeting people, and that's always my biggest. And we've talked about this before. I always tell people, like, if you want to work in sports, you want to work in media, like, you have to take what's available to you, right? Like, you can't. I've had so many people who say, they ask me, like, well, I go, what do you want to do in life? Oh, I want to work in the front office. Okay, what happens if I said you could sell tickets for the Nets? Would you do that? No, I wouldn't do that. Or what happens if I said to you, you could work on a sports radio show in somewhere in the middle of North Dakota, and that would be your startup? And you would say to me, no, I want to work in New York City. Well, everybody has their own start, right? Some people are fortunate than others, but as I say, like, it's a matter of just kind of breaking in. And I had the opportunity to break in as an intern, and that kind of just led to so many different opportunities, and then so many it just opened up so many doors for me.
Yeah, of course. Like, going off your point right there about hard work, like, I also see, like, it's like a change in generation, kind of like a lot of people in my generation, like the social media generation, we see all like the glitz and glamour of all these jobs, and we think like, yeah, we're just gonna like get straight to the top. You know what I mean? We're just gonna like jump in and do the job. But like especially like playing basketball, like my whole life, it's like you got to like work your way up into that starting life. You got to gain the coach's trust. So like starting as an intern, you work your way up into those roles. So the more trust you gain, the more opportunities you get, and then you just got to like succeed and know your role at the end of the day, and to what do you call it, succeed in those opportunities, I feel like.
Yeah, and it's a lot different now than it was in 1995. There are more opportunities for people now. There are more opportunities for people to break into sports now that we've got a G League team, and now we've got when I started with the Nets, we had 10 people in basketball operations. Now there's like, you look at staff directories, like 75, 80, right? You saw summer league, you saw like 30 people sitting behind the bench.
It was insane.
So there's more opportunities for people to get into sports, but with that there's more people, right? Like, there's more people that want to, like, we didn't have sports management as a major growing when I went to college and everything like that. So there's more of an appetite for people to get into it.
So you're very knowledgeable about the NBA salary cap. When did you learn about the salary cap and like player contracts, and what made you get interested in this aspect of the sport in general?
Yeah, so my first 4 years in New Jersey was like all about survival. Well, once I got hired in '96, Willis Reed was our general manager, and I was doing like 90 different things, anywhere from picking up players from the airport to warming up their cars to
Wow.
breaking down, editing, scouting. You name it. I was doing it. And then John Calipari came on in '96, and then it was like survival, right? Like it was
Right.
like hands. Like I wasn't married. I didn't have kids. I was working 20 hours a day. I wasn't a manager growing up, so I didn't have that like mentality. So it was like all. So it was almost like glorified intern, and it was all about like survival. And then in 2000, Rod Thorne, the manager drafted Michael Jordan, and who worked in the NBA office for a long time, gets hired as the president of basketball operations for the New Jersey Nets. We didn't have anybody doing the salary cap. We didn't have anybody drawing up we had an outside law firm that was drawing up contracts. We didn't have any of that going on. And then I just started, I self-taught myself. I started to learn how to draw up contracts. I learned how trades work. A lot of it really is just trial and error, right? You got to go through the experiences as far as sometimes you fail, sometimes it works out for you. But that's really when I started to learn how the CBA works, how the rules work, all the different kind of intricacies in 2000.
So you mentioned John Calipari. He's actually one of my favorite coaches of all time.
Yeah,
So in
he's a
his
lot mellower now.
Yeah, this is what my question is though. Like I'm in his one and done documentary on
Yeah,
ESPN. I remember Sam Cassell was kind of talking about like
yeah,
his time in New Jersey, how he's like first quarter comes in and he's like yelling at all these guys like
yeah,
jump on the floor, like he's all
yeah,
like he's like trying to prove something and he's trying to
yeah.
coach like a college game, but these guys like aren't going to reciprocate to that kind of coaching. What was
Yep.
like your experience with that type of Coach Cal and his mentality at that
Well,
time?
we were in a period where it was the norm was college to pro.
Right.
Pino went from Kentucky to Boston.
Hmm.
Cal goes from UMass. Cal, I mean, he took a UMass team in '95 to the Final Four, and
Marcus
then gets
Camby.
hired as and gets hired as a 35-year-old,
Yeah.
right? And you inherit like we weren't a young roster. Like '96, like we had some veterans here, so it's all about buy-in, right? Like how do you get the veterans to buy in? And '96 was hard. Like '96, '97 year was a hard year. We drafted Kerry Kittles that year. Kerry was good for us, but we had a lot of veterans. And then we made a blockbuster trade with Dallas, and we wound up getting Sam Cassell and
Yep.
Chris Gatling and Jimmy Jackson and George McLeod in that group.
Yep.
And we still had Jason Williams, we had Kendall Gill, and then we draft Keith Van Horn in '97. And that team gets to the first round of the playoffs, right? We back then it was best of 5. We play the Bulls, the Jordans last year in Chicago. In the first round, we play Chicago, where we lose in 3 competitive games, and we're thinking like, okay, now we have the foundation of something to build off. Then we have a lockout,
Yeah.
and the lockout, and this wasn't a normal lockout. The lockout goes to like January.
Wow.
Then we got a 50-game season, and then we have a shortened training camp, and then Sam Cassell sprains his ankle in training camp, and then we get off to a 3-18 start, and then the buy-in from that our veterans once had, for not all of them, but some of them. Then the locker room split, and that was the end of it, right? Like once the locker room split, and he lost some guys, his fate was kind of sealed. So I think he learned from that. I'm surprised he's never come back and coached in the NBA just because it didn't end his way. I mean, he's had terrific success certainly at Memphis and recently at Kentucky, and I think he'll do great at Arkansas. But I think it was a lot different how things were, and it's a lot different. You know, Billy Donovan did the change. He went from Florida to Oklahoma City and had really good success, and now he's been in Chicago and everything like that. So I do think it's a lot different in '96 than it is probably in 2024 as far as going from college to the pros.
So in 2001, you became the director of basketball operations for the New Jersey Nets. What was it like to transition into this role?
It was the same role, just a prettier title, and I got more money. I was still doing all the same things, but I guess I had more responsibility. as far as I had people that worked for me instead of me working for, 3 or 4 people. Rod Thorne was still there. Ed Stefanski, who wound up going to Philly and Memphis and in Detroit, was our GM. I had a group of 3 or 4 people that did work for me, but a lot of it was really, a lot of the basketball admin stuff, as far as besides the working with our scouts and salary cap and the budget and our players and our roster and stuff like that. It was a lot of it really stayed the same until I transitioned over in 2010 to assistant GM. But those were some of the best. Those were, I always go back those years. That 01, the draft when we traded 7 and got Richard Jefferson and Jason Collins and Brian Scalabrine, and then we got Jason Kidd, and then we had Kenyon Martin the year before, and we wound up going to 2 NBA finals. That was kind of my experience as far as being part of a winning program, as far as how rosters should be built, how rosters maybe you could do things differently, and that really kind of opened up my eyes as far as like, instead of being a 42-40 team, or a team was 26-56, like what it takes to put together kind of a championship roster.
Yeah, that leads me into my next question, actually. Like, how did it feel to actually be in the NBA finals? That's like something you dream about as a kid, like playing 2K and all that stuff while my GM and all that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first year we were kind of happy to be there. I think a lot of people didn't really give us a chance. We played against a really good Indiana team, and it was still best of 5 back then, and beat them in 5 games, triple overtime. Game 5 was ridiculous, and then beat Boston on the road in Game 6 to get to the finals, and then now you're facing Kobe and Shaq.
Yeah.
So, which were like I think 3 out of the 4 games were pretty competitive. So I think we were happy to be there. The next year was different. Like we traded Todd McCullough and Keith Van Horn for Dikembe Mutombo because we think we're going to face Shaq again in the finals, and we win like 10 games in a row in the playoffs. We sweep the Pistons in the conference finals, and then you split with San Antonio. So now you're going. This is when it was 2-3-2. The series were.
Yeah.
So now you're going home to face San Antonio. You lose game 3, you win game 4, 2-2, right? And then we wound up losing in game 6 on the road in San Antonio. So I think the expectation level is just a lot different with that group compared to what it was against the Lakers. We thought we could win. We were not, I don't say we were expected to win, but it was just different.
So this is just off my own curiosity. It might be like a really bad question, but why did the series used to go 2-3-2? I feel like that gives like the lower
for
seed
travel.
Oh, okay.
For logistical travel. So if you're playing, I mean, it didn't make sense if it's like, Lakers. I mean, it made sense if it was like Lakers, Boston, San Antonio, New Jersey, really, but it was more from a travel standpoint.
Oh.
They didn't want teams kind of crisscrossing the country for one game. So when Golden State's playing Boston a couple years ago and it's 2-2, 1-1-1, you're going back and forth, but it was really kind of the logistics of travel.
That's so weird. I always thought like a team works all season to get that number 1 seed or like the higher seed. And it feels like they're kind of like giving the lower seed the advantage in a way with 3 home games.
Yeah, you split, like, listen, we the first round we play Indiana. We're the 1 seed, they're the 8 seed. And they had like Reggie Miller and Ron Artest. Like they were like really good. We lose game 1.
Yeah.
Right off the bat. Now we split 1-1, go into Indiana. Like all they gotta do is win 2 games. And the series is over. So that was the best of 5. And now it changed, certainly how we are today. But yeah, the rules back then were a lot different. So
you mentioned 2010, you became the assistant general manager. How did it feel to get like this high of a position? And I've been wondering, what was your favorite trade that you made over the course of your career?
Yeah, like it was different. Like, certainly, so Rod Thorne retires at the time. Billy King comes in, and I was fortunate to stay, and I got promoted to assistant GM, but with that came more responsibility. So all as I said, like those 90 things that I used to do got trimmed down to like 15. So now I could just focus on basketball ops as far as the inner workings of roster building, trades, draft, free agency, salary cap, everything that kind of comes in comes with that. But there was also like you kind of like, for me, for 15 years, I kind of straddled the fence, right?
Right.
Like I wasn't in a decision-making role, but now this comes with a decision-making role. And it comes with the pressure of, you have a new ownership group, you're 2 years away from moving to Brooklyn. The expectation, you're coming off a 12-70 season in 2009-10. We're sitting on so much cap space and draft picks. The expectation level was like, to try to accelerate the rebuild and stuff like that. So, and it, certainly comes to an end 5 years later. So it was a thrilling 5-year run with that being the assistant GM. But I think it was a lot different than those years in 2001 and 2002, just based on the expectation level. Right. Chasing maybe a trade that you wish you hadn't done. I think that as I said, like my favorite trade going back, of course, the Kid trade in 2001, getting him from Phoenix. I always tease Daryl Morey of the Sixers, who was with the Rockets then. We traded Terrence Williams to Houston for 2 first-round picks. That was used eventually to get Darren Williams from Utah. So yeah, it just kind of comes with when you get promoted, certainly to the title of assistant GM, it certainly comes with more expectations.
So as I told you before, I'm a huge Miami Heat fan, and
Yeah.
we've been starving to get like that other star. As like a general manager, do you ever feel like pressure from the fans or like any social media? Because we're always like yelling at Pat Riley, like make a trade, make a trade.
I mean, social media is a lot different now than it was, 10 years ago. I mean, it was like the dark web, right? It's like the dark
Right.
web of like, there's certain things on Twitter or X that it's
Yeah.
like the underground world, right? Like of everything like that. I don't think the fans push teams to make trades. Like I
Right.
don't think though. I do think there's a realization, certainly if you have paying customers that are not happy. I think if you have a fan base that won't buy tickets, that impacts the product on the court. I think there is probably maybe a little more sense of urgency there. I think making trades is extremely hard to do.
Yeah.
I think you have to really stick your neck on the line. I'm not saying trading a pick for cash, like that's not it. But when you make a trade for Terry Rozier and you're giving up, whether it be a first round pick or pick swaps or whatever, there's risk involved.
Yeah.
I always say the cleanest way is what Miami did in 2010 when you're able to get LeBron, Bosh, and Wade, and then basically fill in the roster, or what Brooklyn did with getting Durant and Irving in free agency and then filling out the roster. I just think there's such a high risk with trades. I think you have a sense, and that's why Sam Presti in Oklahoma City is so great at it. You have a pulse of your organization and when the right time is to trade Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso, or when the right time is to trade Paul George for 5 first-round picks and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I think it's your duty to kind of know where your roster is, not where, if fans are kind of upset as far as that you haven't made a trade and you did nothing in free agency. I always joke, like, free agency is like, the honeymoon period for everyone, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
everybody, like, we don't hang banners. Like, the Sixers are not going to get a banner hanging up saying we signed Paul George this offseason here. Right? Like, it's great for us to talk about it, but in 3 weeks when they start training camp and when they start games, like, that's going to be dictated if you had a good off season or not.
So currently you're an NBA front office insider for ESPN. What is your favorite aspect of this position?
You know what? I think, I mean, I sleep better. I don't wake up looking at the standings, and I mean, I look at the standings, but I'm not looking like we've lost 5 in a row and we need to win a game to get into the playoffs here. I think like the networking aspect of it, I love. Like, I always say that I'm more well connected now than I was in Brooklyn, as far as working with teams. As far as, hey, if there's a trade going on, I'll call a team and say, hey, give me your perspective on why you did it. Or if there's working with agents, where helping them with their draft prospects, or helping them, hey, I got a guy we're interested in signing, can you look over the contract for me? So I think there's just a lot of different nuances with this job. I love the fact where it's not your typical 9-to-5 job. As I always say, like, I'm going to get my 12 hours of work in somehow, but it's not going to be 9 to 5 where I'm just sitting at this desk. I love the flexibility that it brings. As I said, I love my team that I'm, it's different. You don't have an actual team, and you're not judged by wins and losses, but I love the team that I have at ESPN as far as of writers and certainly people with TV. I always say like I'm kind of sometimes like a screenwriter where I'm giving our actors the information, and it's for them to kind of go on stage and give their best give their best production and everything like that. But yeah, I love, like I think there's I'm going into year 9, year 8 at ESPN, 10 years total in the NBA world. It goes in cycles, right? Like
Right.
it kind of goes in cycles every year. But I do love the ability to kind of the ability to network, the ability to meet people, the ability for people to use me as far as kind of bounce certain ideas off me.
So, as we mentioned before, you are on the show NBA Today. I've been watching that show since I was in high school. All my free periods at boarding school, turn it on, see you at the touch screen up there. It's supposed to be really, I'm talking to you right now. But what's it like to work with Kendrick Perkins, Richard Jefferson, Malika Andrews, and the crew?
It's all, I love it. Like the one thing I have, this is how I've changed in 8 years is like, I came in like all straight and narrow, right? Like,
Yeah.
like this is how we did it. And like, you have to have fun with it.
Right.
Like you have to have fun. Like when Perk is out there giving like something crazy, like take and stuff like that, you have to have fun with it where you could disagree with him and you could do it in the correct way. You could do it in a fun way. Like I mean, I love, as I said, I did the show on Thursday, an hour show. I did it from my home office right over here,
Right.
kind of set up everything. That's a little bit different than me going up on TV with the touchscreen and moving money around and showing how trades work and everything like that, where we're talking about Curry signing an extension and we're talking about LeBron and we're talking about Anthony Edwards and Rudy Gobert, and we're just kind of talking about things. That's a lot different than being in studio and kind of moving things around. But we have a really good show. We have really good chemistry. Malika's kind of runs it, right? Like she's our quarterback. We kind of feed off her. The preparation is, if you ever saw like the preparation that goes into putting on a show, it is pretty remarkable. And I always say like live TV, if you're prepared enough and you do your work and you do your diligence, going on live TV is like sitting at your dinner table, having dinner with your family and having a conversation, or going out with your buddies, sitting in the cafeteria at school and having a conversation about the Laker game from the night before. Like that's all it is. It's not like, oh my God, I'm going to say the wrong thing. But as I said, like if you're prepared enough, if you do your work to have conversations on live TV in front of 10 million people, it's easy.
So I had to get your take on this. What do you think about the Miami Heat? What is their ceiling looking like for this season?
Yeah, I mean, under the radar. I know they didn't do really just they brought back, they drafted Khalil Ware and they brought back, some of the free agents that had player options, really kind of fringe moves and everything like that. I say like it all comes down to availability, right? It
Right.
comes down to availability during the regular season, whether it be Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, Terry Rozier, that group there. Like that's it. Like you cannot be in a position where you're fighting to be in the play-in, or you're
Right.
7 or 8. Like to pull the rabbit out of the hat they did 2 years ago when
Yeah.
listen, I had their off-season ready article ready to, it was ready. I had to hit the send button when they're down 5 to Chicago with like 3 minutes left in the playing game. Like, right. And you can't do that every year. You can't pull the rabbit out of the hat and get to an NBA finals or get to a conference finals. Like there has to be a point where the regular season matters. Like I get injuries happen and everything like that, but availability matters. And this Eastern Conference is tougher. I mean, this Eastern Conference got tougher with New York getting better and Philadelphia getting better. Cleveland's not got, Reese brought their guys back. Orlando's still going to be Orlando's going to be good. Nobody ever talks about Indiana, who gets to a conference finals at all. So it's like, it's probably 8 or 9 teams deep and everything. So I think for Miami is like, all right, camp starts. You got a terrific coach in Spo.
Mm-hmm.
You got a front office that's willing to do the work, who are willing to make trades that happen. But as I said, it's a matter about availability for them.
Do you think this is a season Tyler Hero finally gets over that hump, becomes an all-star?
I hope so. I mean, I think that's going to be the most interesting thing here. It's like, as much as we can say that Jimmy Butler doesn't play 65 games and stuff like that, I mean, you can go look at Tyler Hero's kind of track record too. I mean, he needs to be on the court.
Yeah. That's my favorite player right now. I can't even lie. Like I need to see all the hate go away and just see him get buckets again, like in the bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. They just, as I said, like I think sometimes when there's no expectations in Miami, right? Nobody, same with Milwaukee. Nobody talks about, I didn't even mention Milwaukee. Like nobody, I said yesterday, like I think they could be the second best team in the Eastern
Yeah.
Conference. And everybody, Lillard gets traded a year ago. Everybody's like, oh, this is the team to beat. All right. Like they got
Yeah.
Lillard and Giannis, and nobody talks about them at all. And sometimes going under the radar for teams is the best thing.
That's what San Antonio used to do like all those years ago with Duncan
Yep.
and those teams.
Bring back the same group, and when everyone's loading up, they basically still roll out Tim and Manu and Tony and some other players they maybe got in the offseason.
When I was like growing up, it always used to be like, oh, OKC is gonna go to the final. Oh no, this is the Clippers year. And then the Spurs like always creep up like that, like the boogeyman or something like that you see in the conference finals, and then
Listen, you got to have luck. I mean, it's a lot of it's about luck. A lot of it's about getting through a season healthy.
of course. So this summer, you were the lead instructor for Sports Business Classroom, where I got the opportunity to learn from you on various topics. Can you talk a little bit about your experience at working for SBC?
Yeah, this was my first year doing Sports Business Classroom. I took over about a year ago. Eric and I went through a winter of helping agents prepare for their exams. That was kind of my first introduction to it. I wrote a CBA 101. I just did an update, and that should be out pretty soon. I really had no idea what I was walking myself into, to tell you the truth at all. I knew we were going to have a great turnout. I had no idea. I hadn't been involved in the past. I didn't know how the days worked. I thought we put together great content for the 135 students that participated, including yourself, anywhere from different majors, whether it be broadcast, journal writing and broadcast, media, salary cap, scouting, analytics, video. The goal was to give you enough resources that you can take to do your podcast or do a YouTube video on how the apron works, or work and scout a player and put a scouting report together if you're interviewing for a job here. And we had a great group of instructors. We had a great group of people that came in that talked. It was a long week. I thought it was one of the more beneficial weeks that I've had working in sports and everything like that. And we're going to do it again next year, Eric and I, and with maybe some different content here. But the goal was just to kind of give you an idea of how to break into sports, how to network. Networking is the most important thing out of all of this. How to write a resume. Jeff Fellenzer is there, teaching people how to write a resume, how to network. So it was a really good week of groups. I've teased Albert and Sergio that we should go on the road and do it at different colleges and stuff. Maybe a traveling circus as far as different sites, and maybe we spend a day at Hobart and do a 3-hour class on how to break into sports and how the apron works and media and broadcasting and all these different things here. But it was a terrific week.
So what predictions do you have for this upcoming season in the NBA?
Oh man, my hot takes are never really good. I mean, last year I had New York and Phoenix in the finals, and Phoenix lost in 4 games to
Minnesota.
Yeah, to Minnesota. I think all right, so I'll give you my hot take prediction. Since everybody's predicting Boston, I'm going to take Milwaukee out of the Eastern Conference. Okay. And I'm going to stay with Phoenix in the Western.
Phoenix, really?
I'm gonna continually ride with Phoenix. I think getting Tyus Jones and Monty Morris solidifies your backcourt. I think there's a little bit of a redemption. I think Mason Plumlee is a backup 5. I think you have an owner willing to do basically anything to kind of put that team together here. Western Conference is a bear. I mean, it really is. I think Phoenix. I'm going to give you a repeat of 2021. Phoenix, Milwaukee, first round. NBA Finals. I'm sorry, and Phoenix is going to be your NBA champions.
Oh wow! Okay, you heard it first here. You don't think LeBron and the Lakers have something to say about that?
They could. The one thing with LeBron and the Lakers, I'm interested to see where him and AD are after playing the whole summer. I'm in, like the Olympic hangover.
Yeah.
As far as where you are, wear and tear. Same with Boston. Same with Tatum. Same with Derek White. Porzingis injury. I think Boston's the favorite, no doubt about it. But as I said, I'm gonna kind of go out of the box there.
Of course. Oh, well, we'll see if that prediction is right at the end of the day. I'm excited now. So you're someone who made it to the top of the mountain in the basketball industry, but we all strive for something. We all have aspirations in our lives. So what are your future aspirations for your career?
You know what? I always, people always ask me if I would ever go back working for a team, kind of like unfinished business. I have a son who's a freshman in college. I have one who's a sophomore in high school. I always said like my goal was always to get them through, right? Get them through high school just because I'm home more than I was working for a team. And then 3 years from now, reevaluate kind of where I am. Listen, I could say like I'd be comfortable for the next 10 years doing what I'm doing in the world of ESPN, and be happy and be content. Will that change in 3 or 4 years from now? I don't know. I mean, it might not. I think it's just a matter of kind of where I am, kind of in my life.
Of course. Well, Mr. Marks, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And I wish you the best of luck with this upcoming NBA season.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Gen Z Hoops. Make sure to follow, like, and subscribe on Instagram, LinkedIn, and all major social media platforms at Gen Z Hoops. You can tune in and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and every other podcast platform on the planet. Get ready for the next episode.